It's time for this week's episode of Brandon Sports Talk, featuring in-depth interviews from those who are trending in the world of athletics. And now, here's the host of Brandon Sports Talk, Brandon Pate.
Welcome back to Brandon Sports Talk. In today's episode, I have the privilege to interview the Western Illinois head softball coach, Alisa Goler. How are you doing today?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm doing good. Can you talk about how you knew that you wanted to be a college softball coach?
You know what? I think when I got to University of Georgia and I played for such a good staff, I think I wanted to have the same impact on people that they had on me. So I don't really know if I knew that I per se wanted to get into coaching until I myself got to college, but it was pretty obvious to me after going through that system that I wanted to kind of pay it forward.
Can you talk about, of course, your college career at Georgia?
We were very good at softball. We went to 2 World Series. We finished 3rd and 4th respectively. Our other 2 years, we were in super regionals. Like, the standard was very high. Extremely competitive. I think what set us apart from other programs is that we were true student athletes we were true students of the game. We were taught, and we were not robots. We knew how to kind of coach ourselves. We could do a lot, because our coach put value in that. And I think that's what really paid off. And that's why so many of us were able to go on and play in the professional ranks and be successful, is because we had already kind of been taught how to take ownership and be able to do stuff ourselves. And I don't think I would have had the same career had I not gone to UGA.
What was it like putting on the UGA red jersey?
I mean, I wish I could do it again right now. Just an immense sense of pride. I think that, now people know Georgia softball as being a very, very highly competitive program year in and year out. When we all decided to go, there was a lot of history and there had been some very phenomenal players that had gone through, but that we hadn't really had postseason appearances and whatnot. So I think all of us that decided to go really bought into the vision that the coaches were telling us about, when we would talk on the phone and all of that. So I think it's just that when I say sense of pride, when I think about that, I know that we really were one of those building blocks to kind of help solidify that program. And that's a really cool feeling when you know that you specifically were able to help it.
Of course, can you talk about what it was like going to the College World Series as a college softball player?
I remember my dad telling me before we went, he called me and he said, make sure when you get there that before the game starts, take a moment, walk out on the field and look around at the crowd and everything and know that you did it. Because when I was growing up, like most younger softball players, I would watch on TV and I would tell my mom and dad that I was going to be there one day. And, to actually have that happen, there's so few softball players that get to experience that in their careers. And I don't think, I know for myself, I didn't let not one moment slip by. I didn't take it for granted. I was heartbroken that we didn't get to make it a 3rd time, because that's just what we expected. But it was literally what I had dreamed for. It's to this day my favorite sports moment that I was involved with.
Of course, coming off of the College World Series, what was it like getting into professional softball with the Chicago Bandits?
Man, it was mentally I don't want to say it was mentally draining. That's not the right word, but most players, when they come out of their respective college conferences, they're not used to a high rate of failure, which is crazy because in baseball, softball, as we know, most of the time you fail 60% or so and you're still an all-star, which is an incredibly high failure rate to be that good. But in pro ball, it's if you were hitting 300, you were having the year of your life, because the pitching was so incredibly difficult to face. You never got a break. It was every pitching staff had people that were just holding teams to 2 or less runs a game consistently, that kind of deal. So I think what made it so special was that there were players that had been in the Olympics or players that I had grown up playing against that I was hitting off of or playing defense against. And it's just like the day in, day out level of play was incredible. I mean, I came from the SEC, which is a very impressive conference, and that was a grind every SEC series, and football was like not even close to it. It was so much more difficult.
Of course, what was it like to put on the Chicago Bandits jersey once you became a professional softball player?
Another sense of pride just from coming back home. I'm from the south suburbs of the Chicago area. So after being 13 hours away, I think when I had a jersey that said, Chicago Bandits on it, it really just kind of made me feel like I was representing my family and my friends and everything that I'd come back to. And I'm a diehard Chicago sports fan. So it was pretty awesome to be able to be a professional athlete in my home city.
What was the transition like from you from going from being a professional softball player to obviously getting into college coaching?
I think that I'm really glad that I played pro as long as I did before I kind of got into the coaching, because I don't think that I ended up the same player when I graduated college, because I don't think I had an ego issue. I think the game, like I told you, like the pro game just humbles you because it was so hard. So I think I am a better coach because I went through having to deal with a higher rate of failure. I went through having to make sure that I was, always conducting myself professionally, learning how to win with humility, lose a grace type deal, stuff that we as coaches really strive to teach our players. And I think it kind of helped to legitimize stuff when you're teaching it to your kids, because it's like, no, like, believe me, I went through this. It's not me just sitting here on a soapbox talking to you about it. Like, you've got to do stuff like this. And I do think it's helped me. I think it's given me a certain level of respect with athletes that I work with that I might not have had before. So I think it pretty much went hand in hand.
What was your time like at Syracuse as the recruitment coordinator?
Full of snow. It felt like it snowed like every 2 weeks there. It was great. I worked for a phenomenal boss. His name was Mike Bosch. He's now the pitching coach at Florida. He was wonderful. He empowered me to basically do above and beyond what your normal assistant or associate head coach is doing, especially with how young I was. And I will always be thankful for him believing in me and letting me kind of do my thing and learn by being hands-on. And I think that we accomplished a lot. I mean, we had 3 winning seasons there, and 2 were over 30 wins, which for cold weather school is pretty dang good. So I had a great time. I also had some really good athletes that I got to work with. I still am able to kind of communicate with them, and I'm very proud of them for what they've been doing post playing.
What was your time like going to Penn State as the assistant coach?
It was awesome to get into the Big Ten. I think the Big Ten softball is very unique. It's not like most other conferences. There is a type of camaraderie between the coaches in there and support that you don't really see in all the other conferences. I personally enjoyed just having another Power 5 conference to kind of work in, because I think anytime that you're in these different environments, it's going to force you to adapt and keep growing as a coach. Again, blessed to work with some really good athletes. And I think, with that group, it was really fun because my first year they set a new program home run record, and just seeing all of their faces when they were doing it and how excited they were and all of that, like that aha moment, that was one of my favorite coaching memories that I have. And I tell those kids a lot. I wish I, could kind of check in on them more, but obviously I'm not able to do that being a coach at another Division I school, but I'm always rooting for them.
What was it like going from Penn State to Western Illinois to become the head coach?
I think the biggest shift that anybody from the outside would say is just, I went from like a enormous school to a smaller school. We only have 7,000 students here, but I mean, to go from being an assistant to being a head coach is the biggest shift. Just having to learn all the different responsibilities and the day-to-day stuff, and having true ownership over a program and over 20 something athletes' everyday actions. It's been great. I feel supported by our admin. At the end of the day, so the game of softball is the game of softball. It does not matter where you're at. So that's always a constant. So I always would joke and say that practice was my one time a day where I didn't have to worry about not knowing what I was doing from when I switched. And I hope it always remains that way. But I mean, I have a blast every day. I think that it can be easy to get caught up in stuff, and there's so much going on in the world that I think we do a very good job of maintaining, like our standards at practice and making our student athletes understand, like there's big picture, small picture, and like I'm glad that they are at Western and that they bought into like what we're trying to do, because that's really what it comes down to with them. So it's just softball. Like you could be anywhere in the country. It doesn't matter what's on the front of your jersey.
What have you accomplished so far at Western Illinois?
I survived a COVID year. What have I accomplished? I'm hoping I probably can't even answer that for you. You'd have to ask somebody out. But what I'm hoping I've accomplished is trying to empower the women that are on our team to make them realize that there's times where they need to use their voice. There are times where they've got to be accountable. There are times where they need to, I say, like we compete every day. They need to learn to understand, like lose with grace, win with humility. Like there's so many life lessons that I'm hoping that I'm accomplishing to make them, kind of understand. It's one thing to just regurgitate what you hear. It's another to actually understand it and then choose to do it. I know I haven't talked about anything X's and O's with softball, but the reality of this job is that it's the stuff off the field that really is going to matter the most when they graduate. Softball wise, I'm hoping that I continue to make them confident and buy in and show them that like they're going to keep growing and competing. I mean, we just played a really, really great couple games this past weekend. I was proud of them because I think they did something that they probably didn't think they could have done. So that's a good step in the right direction. But I hope that we continue to just compete in everything that we do here.
Of course, coming off of this COVID season, what do you look forward to accomplishing in this season, hopefully, due to obviously COVID not interfering?
Yeah, I think the biggest shift has been not having limitations on how often we can see the kids in practice. So my hope is that we, as a country, continue to keep this handled, because a lot of student athletes had, their careers and stuff affected by it the last 2 years. And I really don't want to see another class go through this. But my hope is that we'll be able to see kind of the shift in what it's like when you do get to have your normal practices and your normal schedule and all of that, because last year was just such a fluke. Like it almost felt like you were constantly just showing up and playing games. And that's not what the college sport is like. I mean, you've got an off season for a reason. So I think we're trying to take full advantage of ours. And I'm hoping that we will, in January and March, see that effect of finally having like a normal practice schedule.
Can you talk about, of course, how your professional softball career and obviously your coaching career has led you to where you are now with Western Illinois?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, I think as a younger coach, it's tough to get the first step when you're playing pro or something and you're trying to figure out what you want to do. A lot of people want to coach, but not everybody can do that, because you've got to find a really good situation where they let you balance coaching, which is a 80-hour-a-week job, and prepping and playing and all that. I think I was really lucky that, like I said, that I got to work for Mike right away. He showed me that I could do it, and he made me feel like I would be good at it. And I guess, as I started going through it, I had aspirations like most young coaches of wanting to one day be a head coach. And I think I'm just lucky that it worked out. Like I'm thankful for every single step of the way, from my travel ball stuff to college to coaching, because they have made me the hopefully well-rounded person that's trying to coach at Western Illinois right now. But I think the best thing about it is just that I've been in a lot of different environments, and I think anybody will tell you that to be your best version as a coach, like you do have to keep adapting and growing. You can't be stagnant. So I'm thankful that I've kind of been all over with where I've been exposed softball wise.
What is the recruitment process like for prospective student athletes looking to play college softball?
Yeah, that's a great question, because softball recruiting is wild. I mean, you can't have any communication with anybody before September 1 of their junior year. So pretty much when September 1 hits, it's like, I like to call it a flash sale. It's like, it just, all bets are off, and you're communicating with all these kids that you've got interest in. You're trying to get them to take visits. we have a 6-week window in the fall between October, I think it's 16th this year, maybe 15th, 16th, and November, right before Thanksgiving, where we can go in person and watch games. So you'll see most coaches out on the road. And then once that 6-week window concludes, we can't watch games again in person until summer, pretty much. So it's a full-time job. It's a lot of communicating. It's a lot of trying to build relationships, trying to make, younger athletes understand like your why, and then the other piece is you're trying to make sure that it's going to be a good fit for both parties, because, the character piece is really important. Like, you want someone who believes in you and wants to be there, but you need somebody that's going to be able to buy into your standards and adhere to them. And on the flip side, like, you want to try to be your authentic self, because you don't want to bring somebody in and then they get here and they're like, this is not the person I talked to during my recruiting process. So it's not just a black and white thing. There's a lot that goes into it.
Of course, what is it like going to see the players and seeing, obviously, if they are a fit for your program?
I think the best part about it is the fact that there's a lot of really high quality tournaments that you can go watch. So you don't feel like you're wasting your time, or your trip. You're able to get a lot done in a short period of time. It's one of my favorite things is to go. I think when you're a young coach, one of the most exciting things is when you do like see that first kid that you identify and you're like, oh my gosh, this one's really good, and getting invested in that. But, like I said, what we're doing is investing in them. We're investing our time to watch them. We're trying to have those, the communication with them. So I like it because I want to feel like when I talk to a kid on the phone, or if I'm texting them, that like I have a real feel for what they are, like what they're like and how they play the game and all that. So I think last year, not being able to recruit in person was really hard on a lot of coaches, because we're not used to doing that. And people were making decisions without getting to watch people in person. And that's kind of scary. So I'm very much looking forward to it. I'm sure everybody else will say that if you ask them, but it's a good time. Who doesn't want to go watch kids that are talented go kind of duke it out in person? That's what we do. That's why we do what we do.
Of course, can you talk about what the recruitment process is like on the official visit whenever obviously they sign or they go to the school to obviously see if they're the best fit for that particular school?
Sure. I mean, so you have unofficial and official. Officials, can happen your junior or senior year. Typically, they'll happen your senior year right before you sign. The difference being between the two that, a program can pay for like your lodging and your meals on an official visit. I think every school has their own flair for what they do. Typically, it's going to be associated with either like a fall softball game or a football game type deal, sometimes both. Like here, we try to either have it be football or softball that's going on so that they can get an idea for what, the school is really like. But I think that's just kind of relative to, where you go and what each school's sport they're known for. I mean, like certain schools are probably more basketball schools, so they might bring their kids on an official during basketball season. It's whatever you want to give kids to get a flair for what your college campus is like.
Of course, when the prospective student athletes come on campus and stuff, what is that feeling like whenever they get to see the jerseys and the equipment that they may or may not be putting on that following year?
Well, I guess I can only speak from myself back in the day when I did that, but I think one of kids' favorite things is putting the uniform on and getting the photos taken. That's kind of like the new big deal. I didn't do that when I was there, but now that's like the rage to do. And I just think when they get a chance to see themselves in the mirror, and it kind of sinks in like, oh wow, like this could really be happening type deal. So like I'm all about it. I love it. I think it's great that they enjoy doing that. But I guess it's hard for me to answer that because I'm not the one putting it on right now. But I would imagine it's just a feeling of like accomplishment, excitement, all that.
Of course, what advice would you give prospective high school athletes looking to play college softball?
Play as good a competition as often as you can. That's really the best way to prep for it, as well as be seen. It's just, all of us put a lot of stock in if you're going to come in prepared or not to play. And I think there is a direct relation to like what kind of preparation is done beforehand versus just showing up and expecting to get better.
What advice would you give college softball players looking to go on to the next level of playing professional softball just like you did?
I think the biggest thing that I talk to is like there's lots of different kinds of pro softball. I mean, yes, when I was playing, it was the NPF. There's no more NPF now. It's like the AU Pro Sports. It's the big league, but there's always opportunities to play after college. I think players that limit themselves are hurting themselves. There's different places you can go overseas and play. It's a lot more common than people think. So I feel like you need to do your homework on that. But I mean, the reality is like the cream of the crop are going to be in that AU league. So you have to perform. It sounds harsh, but it's the truth. Like, you've got to perform and you have to constantly take advantage of all the opportunities that you're given, whatever it is.
What advice would you give future college softball coaches looking to get started into the industry?
I think when you get opportunity, like take it. It's hard when you first start. A lot of us didn't my first coaching job, I made like $2,000 and you can't live on that. Right. But you got to get your foot in the door somehow. Like you have to be prepared to grind it out. I think that those that understand that and make the most of it get through their ranks pretty quickly. But it's like, it's not always going to be glamorous, but it'll get your foot in the door. And then from there, it's on you.
That's great advice. Where can my listeners find you at on social media along with Western Illinois softball program at?
Twitter is probably best. My personal one is at agoler35 and it's at WIU softball.
Thank you again, Coach Goler, for your interview and best of luck in your future in this upcoming season.
Thank you.
You can find Brandon Sports Talk on Facebook at Brandon Sports Talk, Instagram at Brandon Sports Talk, Twitter at Talk_Brandon, and you can find me on YouTube at Brandon Sports Talk. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Thank you again for your interview and best of luck in your future.
You've been watching Brandon Sports Talk. Please feel free to like, share, and subscribe to Brandon Sports Talk on social media and on YouTube.